Hi everyone. In this video we're going to go over the basics on Template Builder and Elementor. We are also going to check how we can edit the pages, make them responsive, and check the template system. Alright, for this video we're going to do everything from the WordPress dashboard. So in order to log in, go ahead and click on this W icon here. Then from the left sidebar, open the pages. Now here you can hover on any of these pages to open the editor. Let's go ahead and edit the home page. So this is the overview of the editor. We're going to go over some of the options in the editor for now. And then later on through the video, I'm going to explain a few more that you're going to use them along the way. All right, so starting from top, we have the save and publish button. We have this eye icon, which you can click to see the preview of the page before saving it. Then you have the finder, which you can use to search for anything, including the settings. Then you have three default device types: mobile, tablet, and desktop. We're going to go over this later. Then you can see the page settings. From the page setting, you can change the title, status, and even the featured image if you need to. You can also choose whether you want to hide the title or allow comment. The drop down next to the settings is for quickly accessing different pages and templates right from the editor. And then we have the undo and redo buttons. You can also just press Ctrl Z or Command Z if you're on Mac. Then we have the structure, which is very useful, especially if you have a big page with many containers and elements in it. The structure will allow you to easily navigate between those and find the widget you're looking for. Next, we have the site settings, which we will check later on. And we also have the add element button here to go through the elements list and add any of them to the page. All right, now let's say you want to add a new container, add a new section to the page. So I'm going to go here, click on the plus, and this section is going to get open in the middle of the page. So as the system is drag and drop, you can drag any of the widgets from here and just drop it to the page. As you can see, it has created a container for me, and then it has added the widget in it. Now, before we get to the widget, let's talk about the Flexbox Container. It's a powerful feature for layout control in Elementor. It allows you to align and arrange elements much more efficiently than the old section or column-based system. Now in this video, we're going to go over the most used settings of container and also widgets after that. Starting from the layout tab on top, you can actually choose between Flexbox or Grid Container. For this website and for this video, we're going to go with the Flexbox because it is also the type of container that the AI is using to create the website. Next, you have the content width, whether you want to have it boxed or full width. The difference is actually in the name. So the boxed one is not going to stretch if you view the page on a bigger screen than what you're editing right now. But the full width one is going to stretch itself. For example, if you set it to 100%, regardless of the screen size, it is going to stretch and get 100% of the screen width. Then of course you have the width. It can be set not only in pixels, but also percentage, EM, and a few other values. Next up is the minimum height of the container. Now, by default, the container's height is automatically increased when you add more and more elements to it. For example, here it is this much. If I try to duplicate this widget, the container is going to automatically adjust to the new element. But in some cases, for specific designs, you might want to need to have the container to have a minimum height regardless of the elements in it. As you can see, the line is moving as I'm changing the height. Next, you have the items direction. By default, it's on vertical, but you have horizontal, vertical, and reversed ones. So as you can see, I have added 3 heading widgets in this container, and they're on top of each other. Let's say I wanted to change the direction to horizontal. You can just change this and it will place them beside each other. All right, next we have the justify content and align items. In order to show you these 2 features, I'm going to add a minimum height. Let's go with 500. And I'm also going to remove one of these widgets. All right, back to the container settings. Now, the justify content, in this case that we have the horizontal direction, allows you to choose whether you want the items to be at the start or center or end. There are also 3 more options like space between, space around, and space evenly. For example, if you change it to center, you can see that they are now both aligned in the center with some space around them. Now if I change it to space between, it is going to move the items to the sides of the container and it's going to add the space between them. Next, we have the align items. Again, in this case, the horizontal direction. So by default, it is set to start, which is top here, and we can change it to center if we need to. The next option is gaps, either between the columns or the rows. Let's go ahead and change the justify to center again to see the gap better. Now it is by default linked together, meaning if you change the column, it is going to change the row as well. So I'm going to unlink it and try to add some gaps in the column, for example, 40 pixel. Like any other numeric values, you can also change it with percentage, EM, REM, or view width. Now, if I change the direction to vertical, you can see that they're really close together. It's because the row gap is right now 0. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 50, which adds more space between them. The next and last option in the layout tab is the wrap. In some cases, there are some elements that are way too big for the container, and for any reason they are trying to push through and come out of it. With the wrap option, you can choose whether you want to allow them to push and move out or you want them to be wrapped up. In order to show you this, I'm going to make a few adjustments on the container. Let's go ahead, change this to horizontal and give it a smaller width, for example 1000. I'm gonna need one more of these widgets, so I'm gonna duplicate it. Now on the third one, let's go ahead and give it some big margin. We're going to go over the margin and padding later, but this is just to show you the wrap option. For example, I'm going to try with 300. As you can see, it is already coming out of the container. So let's go back to the container and this time choose wrap. Here it is. So the item that was too big for the container is going to automatically come to the next line. Once you click on wrap, you also have the option to align the content to your preferences. All right, let's remove this extra widget and move forward with the container's style tab. The first option here is the background, which you can change for the normal and hover states. And there are 4 background types which you can choose from. First one is classic. This is for having a classic background with a color or image. You can either manually choose a color from here or go with the global options. Now in case you want to reset it or just remove the color, you can open the picker and clear it from here. Next we have the image background. You can either upload a new one or choose one from the media library. Let's go ahead and choose this one. Now once you select the image, you're gonna see a few more options which are related to the background image, like the resolution, position, whether you want it to be center, or you want it to be top, left, bottom. You can also change it to custom and manually add the X or Y position. Let's just put it to center for now and move on. Then you have the attachment, whether you want it to be on default or, for example, fixed. this will create this sort of effect when you're scrolling over the screen. We also have the repeat and display size. By default, it's on auto, which is automatically adjusting to the side. You can change it to contain, which will show the image exactly with the size that it is. Or you can change it to cover, which will fully cover the container. Again, for the display size, you also have the custom one, which you can change the width of the image, either with percentage or pixels. Now, as you can see, because now it is too small, it is automatically being repeated, which takes us back to this option. So if I go ahead and say no repeat, it's gonna stay on this one. You can also change it to repeat either on X or Y only. Right, let's change these back to default and move forward. There are two more options here, scrolling effects and mouse effects, which you can play around. And these are used to get some sort of design changes when you're scrolling or when you're hovering with your mouse over the container. Next one, we have the background overlay. This one is mostly used when you want to add some sort of overlay to the background image that you have already added. Once again, you can change it for normal and hover states. For example, if I go ahead and choose the classic, I can add a color that now is getting added on top of the image that I had. It can also be used when you want to add some sort of smaller image on top of the previous one. For example, if I go here and choose a, let's say, logo, now change the repeat to no repeat, you can see that it has added the logo on top. You can of course change the position either to top right, for example, or bottom right. You can also of course play with the opacity. By default it's on 0.5. You can increase it or decrease it. However, note that it is affecting the image and the background color at the same time. Alright, next we have the border, which you can use to edit the style of border. By default, there's no border defined for the container, but if you want, you can change the type to, for example, solid, and then you can see the border width, which again, you can increase. Now I'm just adding 10 for this one, so you could see the difference here. Then you can choose the border color, and you can also change the border radius to make the border rounder. You can see the points here. Now, in any case that you do not want the border on any specific side, you can just unlink the values from here and, for example, remove the left and right border. The same goes for the radius. Next, we have the box shadow, which is used when you want to give some sort of shadow outlines to the border. You can play with the options or even change the position from outline to inset to get this sort of view. There's also a shape divider here, which you can add a specific pattern to either top or bottom of the container. For example, if I choose mountains, you can see this new pattern added. Then you can edit the color, width, height, and also flip it if needed. All right, let's adjust the container a little bit to get ready for the advanced tab. I'm gonna remove the shape divider there. Let's also add the border back for the right and left one. And move forward to the advanced tab. On top, you have the margin and the padding. So the margin is the space between the container and the outside elements. For example, let's go ahead and unlink this and then add 30 pixel margin on top. As you can see, it is adding space between the border of the container and the upper element. The padding, however, is the space between the border and the elements inside it. Now, because we have aligned the items in a way to be centered, you cannot fully see this. So let's go back, change this, for example, to top, and go back to advanced. Let's unlink this together and add some padding to the top. Let's go with 30 again. As you can see, it is adding space between the elements in the container and the container's border. One quick note here, you can add negative margins. For example, if I go ahead and add -50 on top, it is going to pull down the above container, so they would kind of overlay. All right, let's go ahead and move back to 30. All right, next we have a few options here that are going to be much easier if we check them when we are checking the widget. So we are gonna get back to this later. After that, we have the motion effect, whether you want it to be sticky on top or you want to add again some scrolling or mouse effect to the container. The sticky one is usually used in the header. We're gonna check that later when we get to the header template. You can also, of course, add any kind of entrance animation. Fade in or fading down, we have many options that you can choose from. Now, as you can see, I am passing over some options again. For example, we are not going to go check the responsive right now because later on there is a section that we're going to dive deep into that one. The last option on the container is the custom CSS, which you can use to add any custom CSS for this specific container. Now, instead of using the CSS class, you can actually just go with selector here and write your CSS within it. The selector is already the container that you're selecting. All right, let's go ahead and remove that and start with widgets. When you check the elements, there are a few groups. We have the basics, we have the general, and we have this link in bio, plus the premium widgets, which you can add to your page. Now I'm going to go over one of the basics. In this one, let's check the header ones that we have already added. But once you learn the basics of one widget, it's really easy to adjust the rest of them because they are all following the same pattern. All right, let's go ahead and click on this header here. The first tab, which is usually the same in all of the widgets, is the content one. So if it's a text widget in the content, you can change the text. If it's an image widget in the content, you can change the image, and so on. So you can change the title from here or use the AI to rewrite it. There are usually a few options and settings here depending on the widget you are editing. For example, this one, you can link it or change the HTML tag on it. Next, we have the style tab, which is usually for styling the content that you have already added here. Again, while the view might be different in each widget, the purpose of the style tab is the same in all of them. For example, here we are editing a widget that has text in it. So the first thing you can see here is the alignment. You can change it with this option or just click on it to remove and change it back to default. Then you have the typography. By default, it is set to global fonts. We're going to go over the global fonts really soon. Or you can change it manually by clicking on this pencil. Once you do, you're going to see a few options. There's family, there's the font size, weight, transform, style, and etc. All right, let's go back. There's also text stroke, shadow, which are obvious from the name. You can also change the text color from here for both normal and hover state. Let's move to the advanced tab. As you can see, we have the margin and padding for the widget as well. One extra settings that we have here is the width for the containers. We were to change it in the layout tab. Now here you have a few options. You can either set it on custom like I did and change the width, or you can go with default full width or the inline. Now let's get to these options that we had also in the container. So align self is usually used when you want to align the item within the container against the container's alignment. So for example, right now they are both aligned to be on top of the container. If I were to change one widget and move it to center, I could have done it with the align self. For example, if I change it to center or the end, I can actually change the alignment of this one widget. Now for the next few options, it is better to make this text just a little bit different. So let's go ahead and change this to heading 1 and this one to heading 2. All right, back to advanced tab. Let's say you want to change the order of these without actually changing the structure of the container. For example, you want to send this heading 1 to the end of the container instead of this 2. You can actually change it with the order value. As you can see, again, it is changing against the container's default order. The same goes for size. Usually it is on 9, but the grow option could help in certain cases. Next, we have the position. By default, it is following the rules that you have set on the container, but you can change it to absolute or fixed if you want to manually move it around. It is not advised because it is going to make it much more difficult to actually design a responsive page. But in rare cases, if you really needed to move it around in a way that you cannot do with the default values, you can always use the absolute or fixed one. When you change it to absolute, you can either drag and drop it anywhere on the container, or change the horizontal and vertical offset values to change it. The same goes for fixed, but when you set it on fixed, it is no longer limited to the container. You can actually be outside of the container. Next, we have the Z index, which actually defines which elements should show on top in case there were a few of them stacked on top of each other. So to show this, I'm actually going to move the heading 1 on top of the heading 2 like this. And I'm going to change the heading 1 color to some red to make it more visible. Now, as you can see, by default, the heading 1 is on top of the heading 2. But if you wanted to change it, you can actually use the Z index. So if I go ahead and add some Z index to here, let's go with 9, and then go to the other heading and add 10, which is a higher number than 9. Then if I switch to the container, for example, you can already see the result, which is heading 2 on top of heading 1. Now you can of course play with the numbers or make one higher to change the order. All right, back to the heading. Let's actually change the position to default because we no longer need that. Next, you have the CSS ID and CSS classes. So imagine you want to change a style on certain element or widget that you cannot do with these options. You actually need to write some code for it, some CSS for it. So one way would be to inspect the element and find the actual class or ID of this, for example, heading. But an easier one would be to just define the ID or class here and then use it to directly select this widget. One quick note, you do not need to add the hashtag or the dot when you're adding class or ID. It can just be, for example, heading ID or heading class. So we have almost the same options that we had in the container, so there's no need to go over them one by one. But in order to use what we have learned so far, we are going to try and create the heading section of the website together with Elementor and Builder. Right, let's go ahead and remove this one entirely, and let's add a new container here. Let's go ahead and give it a background image. And give it some proper minimum height so the image would show completely. Now, back to the background image. As you can see, it is being repeated. I'm going to say no repeat, and I'm going to change the display size to cover the whole area. All right, next we are actually going to use nested containers to create this middle section that you see on the page. For this, let's go ahead and enable the structure. This will allow us to see everything much better. Now, we are going to need a container here. As you can see, it is adding it as a child of the parent container. Now it has gone to the top, but we need it in the center. So I'm going to the parent container here, layout tab, and justify it to come to the center. Now for the next part, we're going to need a widget for the animated headline. Let's go ahead and add that. Let's change the settings a little bit just to make it look better. Underline zigzag. And I'm going to do the style tab to change the color of the zigzag and also the headline to white. All right, next we have a text editor here. We can just add the text editor, drag it, drop it under the header. Again, the default color is black, so I'm gonna go ahead, change the color to white, and actually just copy the same text there. All right, let's go ahead, style the text, change the alignment to center. Next, we're gonna need 2 buttons. Now, here's the thing. The container that we have added as a child container has the direction of vertical. As you can see, it is adding the items on top of each other. But for these 2 buttons, I need them to be side by side, not on top. So here's where we use another container within that. So we drag the container here. Now you change the direction to row, horizontal, and then you go ahead and add your 2 buttons. You can actually right click on this widget, choose duplicate. Let's fix this container's alignment. I'm gonna go with the center. And now we have the general look of the container. But one more thing that is missing, as you can see, this one is right in the middle, but ours is a bit bigger. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to this container. I'm gonna change it to pixel, and I'm gonna give it some smaller size. Let's go with 830. But the alignment is wrong again, which means we have to go to the parent container and change the align items to center. And that's it. Just like that, you have created the heading section of the website. All right, let's get back to these 3 icons on top that we checked in the beginning. So by default, you have the option to change certain design values for different devices, tablet, mobile, and desktop. You can click on each icon to change the screen size and see how it looks on, for example, mobile. Now, when it comes to editing, you can see a small icon in front of certain values. For example, the width, you have this mobile portrait icon. This simply means that for this value, for example, for the width, you can set a separate number for mobile than desktop. Let's check a few examples of this. For example, let's go over to this text editor, style, typography, and as you can see, we can change the size for the mobile because it has this icon in front of it. But for example, the font family cannot be different for each device type. Now if I go ahead and change this to 14 pixel and then change to desktop, you can see that the value is still 18. So you can again change it to something bigger to match the design, then go back to mobile, and again it has saved the 14 that we had set. Another thing you might want to do is to have these 2 buttons in one line when it comes to mobile, exactly like the desktop. So on mobile, because the width of the buttons are a bit too big, they're automatically being aligned vertically. What you can do, you can go ahead, change the font size, for example, to 12. And then you can see because it already has enough space, this one is also going to go besides it. One quick note here, when you have 2 of the same widget and you just want to apply the same style on the second one, you can simply right click here, copy it, right click on the second one, and click on paste style. As you can see, it has changed the font size to the one that we had set on this one. Now, in certain cases, you want to completely hide a section or an element from a device. For example, let's try to hide this button from mobile devices. So you want to go click on this, go to the Advanced tab, scroll down to the responsive. Here you have three options: hide on desktop, tablet, or mobile. Now, if I hide it on the mobile, in the editor, you can still see some sort of preview on it, but it is grayed out. If I change to desktop, it looks normal, which means it is showing on the desktop. You have this option on any widget and container. For example, if you did not want to show this whole section on mobile, you can just go into the Advanced tab of this container, responsive, and hide it on mobile portrait. Now if I change to mobile, you can see the whole section is great. Alright, let's go back to desktop. One more topic that we need to cover is the global fonts and global colors. Now if I, for example, choose this button that the AI has created, go to the Style tab and check the typography or any color on it, you can see this globe icon being highlighted. This means that the value of that font or the color is being loaded from the global fonts. Now let's open this one, and as you can see, it is loading the global fonts with which you can choose from. You can of course edit all of them. I'm going to show you in a minute, but the same goes for any color. So what is the point of this, having some global fonts and colors? Let's say you decide to change the font family on all of the text on your website. Instead of going through each page and manually change it on all of the widgets, you can just go to the global fonts, change the font family on, for example, text 2, and it will automatically apply it to all the website. So in order to access the global fonts and colors, you're going to open the site settings. And the first two options from top is the global colors and global fonts. You can change any of this that you don't need or remove them. You can also add new colors and use them on the pages. The same goes for global fonts. You have the option to rename them if needed or change the font family, size, etc., etc. Also, when you're editing these fonts, you have the same responsive options as you had in the editor. So for example, the global heading 3 on desktop, it is 36 pixels, but if I change it to mobile and check it, it is set to 26. Alright, let's close the site settings and go back to the page. Let's move back to desktop and go forward with the next topic. Now, if you check the top section of the website, you can see there's a logo, menu, and two buttons here, which are being added to all the pages automatically. We have the same structure in the footer. If you check, we have a few menus, a form, and also some social links, which is again shared between all the pages. For the header and footer part, we are using template system. Now, in order to access the templates, you can either hover over it in the editor and click on edit, or you can go back to the WordPress dashboard, template, and web templates. You can find each one in its tab. For now, let's go ahead and edit the header. The reason that on this template nothing is visible is that if you check the website, the header part is set to be transparent with a white color. So just to be able to see what we're doing, I'm going to change this transparent color and make it black. Now, if you want to change the logo, you can just click on this image widget and change it from here. However, for the menu, if you click on the widget, there's no way to actually change the items here. The nav menu widget that we have is pulling the information directly from the WordPress menus list. On the widget, you can only style the menu, change the layout or alignment. However, in order to change the actual items of the menu, we will need to check the WordPress dashboard's menu section. To get there, you can either click on this menu screen here or go back to WordPress dashboard, appearance, and menus. Now there's a drop down here to select which menu you would like to load and edit. In order to find out which of these menus are loading on your website, you can go back to the header template and check the widget. Here's the menu list of secondary pages. So let's go back to the menus. We are already editing that one, so we can start. Now on the left side, you can see a list of pages which you can add to the menu. You can also choose from posts or add custom links if needed. Now let's go ahead and add these 3 service pages to the menu. However, as they are all services, I would like them to be under the services main menu. So I'm just going to drag them here and a little bit to the right and just drop it there. Now if we save this menu and refresh the website, you can see that the services has now dropped down. There's one more thing I want to show you here. Right now, the services item in the menu is clickable. It is connected to the services page. But in some cases, you do not want this to be a clickable link. So let's go ahead and create that as well. For this, I'm going to remove the services from the menu. Go to the custom links. In the URL, just type in the hashtag and name it services. Let's add it to the menu and change the structure again. Now, if I refresh the website, the view is still the same, but I cannot click on these services anymore. It doesn't take me anywhere. All right, now if we were to check any inner page, for example, the contact us, you can see that the header is not looking good here. It's because we are setting it to be transparent to make sure it looks nice on the home page, but on the inner page it's not working. In such cases, you need to create a completely separate header template for the inner pages. For this, you can go back to the WordPress dashboard, open the tab of templates, add a new one. Let's leave the type on header and name it inner pages header. A quick note here, because both header templates are almost exactly the same, you do not need to create the whole thing from scratch. You can just open the editor for the other one, the main one, copy the parent container, and paste it here. Now on this one, I'm going to select this container and change the color to black. Let's go ahead and save it. All right, now that we have the inner pages header ready, we need to apply it to the pages. To do this, we use the conditions. With conditions, you can choose when and where these templates should load. To access them, let's go back to the WordPress dashboard and open the tab of templates again. Now in front of each template, you can see a condition column. Let's click on this one. Now as you can see, it has a condition to include on the entire website. Now you can change this to include on a specific page or all the pages. For example, this set of values will allow you to search for the page name here and add this header template to it. But for this one, we're going to need to include this on the home page. So I'm going to add a condition, include on a singular and front page. Let's go ahead and publish it. Now for the inner pages header, I'm gonna go add a condition, include it on the entire website, but we also need to make sure it will not load on the home page. For that, let's create a second condition, set it to exclude, and choose the front page. Now if we go to the website again and refresh, the home page is still the same. So let's go ahead and check the About Us page. As you can see, this is loading the new header that we just created. Now the same system applies to any templates that you see here. There is always a condition to define when and where that template should load. For example, if you check the footer, we have the same condition here, which says included on the entire website. Exactly what we need. The last topic for this video would be the blog page and blog posts. Let's go ahead and open the blog. Just a quick note here, if you're logged into WordPress dashboard and you open any page on the website, you can actually access the editor from there by clicking on this edit on top. So let's try to edit the blog page. Alright, so as you can see, it includes some basic widgets like the header, some text editor. Now here's the most important part of this page, our posts widget. This widget automatically pulls the WordPress posts that you have created and shows them on the page. You have many options here that you can go through. For example, there are a few skins. You can change the general design by just one click. You can also decide how many posts you want to show or how many columns they should be. But as you can see, there's no option to actually change the content of these boxes. It's because they are coming from the WordPress posts. So if we needed to change anything here, we have to go and edit the post itself. For this, let's go back to WordPress dashboard, open posts, and let's try to edit one of them. Now, if you check the blog page again in the post widget, for each box you can see 4 items. First one, this image is coming from the post feature image. Next, this content marketing is the category that you can change from here. The title is of course coming from the post title, and this small text at the end is coming from posts excerpt. So if I try to replace this image, for example, let's try this one and save the post. Let's refresh the blog page. You can already see the new image here. Now, if you open these 3 posts, you will notice that the design is the same in all of them. This is because we are using a template system for these as well. To access the template, you can go back to WordPress dashboard. Again, open the web templates. In the single tab, you can find the single post template. Let's try to edit it. Now, as you can see, this template is mostly built with dynamic widgets. Dynamic widget is a widget that the value of it changes dynamically based on the page that is loading on. For example, if you open this one, the post title is going to get the title of the post automatically and show it here. The same goes for this featured image widget. Now let's scroll down a little bit. Right under the featured image, you can see this post content widget. What it does is that it takes the post content and it shows it right on the page. Let's go back to the post editor so I can show you what I mean. Everything you see on this screen, from this title to this text, or anything else that you were to add to this section, for example, images, etc. These are all the post content that are going to load on the page with this widget. Now for a quick test, we can try to decrease the size of this featured image. So instead of 100%, I'm going to decrease it to say 60. Let's save the template. And if I now reload the post, You can see the image size has changed. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope this gave you a solid overview of the template builder. Thank you for watching.